You guys, we have got to talk about the Try Guys because Keith and Zach are airing out old Buzzfeed tea, and we are getting the inside scoop as to how this company was actually being run back in the day and some of the things that they were doing with their employees that don't make them look the best. And the internet has been reacting to what these two had to say, and they're even throwing a little shade at a former Try Guys member. The Try Guys, Keith and Zach, sat down on their podcast this week to talk about Buzzfeed. There's been a lot of talk about this once extremely viral company as people have been really nostalgic over the era in which they pumped out content with some of the internet's favorite employees of theirs. And so Keith and Zach wanted to give their 2 cents on the company and their experience. They talked about some people who no longer are at Buzzfeed, but some of the sneaky ways in which the company at the time tried to allegedly sneakily own their employees' likeness by getting employees to sign papers as they were moving offices.
There was one specifically where they were, and we was like, okay, fire me then.
Did you say that?
Yeah.
We were basically like, first of all, they were trying to have one-on-one conversations with us, and unfortunately, I was the person who was called in first for that. There was a standoff happening because they had done this stupid contract that I was refusing to sign, that they had tricked, I feel like, tricked the entire company into signing because they put it into office moving paperwork. Like, we were moving offices, and it's like, oh, you got to sign a new thing for the parking.
Gosh.
You got to sign a new thing. You have to sign a new thing. Oh, and also we have a new image release waiver because we're in a new place. And
the image release waiver, I want to say for the record, none of the people involved in this story work there anymore. But the image release waiver was broad reaching. It basically was like, we own your likeness in any way we want to do it. It specifically
said
forever.
we would own your life story.
Yes.
And that was my issue with it. And luckily for me, because I probably also would have blindly signed it, but they ran out of the image release waiver because I was working too late that day because we were always working very hard. So like I was working late and they didn't have any more. And then, so I didn't sign anything. And then I showed up, and then a week into being at the new office, they realized I hadn't signed the new image release waiver. So some poor intern gets sent to me and they say, hey, can you sign this? And I was like, oh, I got to read it. And they're like, well, you need to sign it. I was like, this is an unfortunate, very unfortunate. This intern.
An intern delivered this paperwork.
And I read it and I'm like, I'm not going to sign this.
Keith said that he later sent an email to the entire office warning people not to sign this paperwork, but that this left him in some hot water with the company.
Did you sign it?
No, none of us did because we read it because we're not
Because we were all working late. And
I see. Okay.
And then I sent an email to the staff saying, did any of you guys sign this thing? It's crazy. I just sent an email to the whole office to be like, don't sign this. They were obviously pissed at me. And then they were like, well, if you don't sign that, you can't be in videos. And I was like, well, if I can't be in videos, I'm a development partner. I can't make videos.
The Try Guys ended up getting a lawyer over this paperwork the company wanted signed, which led to them allegedly getting warned that a storm would be coming.
We had a meeting with somebody. I'm not going to say their position, but they brought us into a room and they were like, hey guys, so I heard that you are getting a lawyer to look over this. We're like, yeah, that's what we were told to do. He's like, cool, I think that's a good idea. And then he goes, looks kind of left, right, and he goes, off the record, if you do this, a storm is coming. He literally said, a storm is coming.
And we were like,
insane. We were like, what
do you mean by that? And he's like, can't say anything more. I'm like,
Storms
we were sort of like penalized for about 6 to 8 months, I think, before they fully got over it.
We were in this kind of really like not good relationship with them.
They also talked about how people would get fired if they worked on anything outside of the company. And even though at one point they told people to be honest about anything they did outside of work and that they wouldn't be penalized, they still were let go.
Other things like there were a couple people who got laid off because they were like in the background of a music video and they should not have been fired for this.
Yeah, there were people who did a web series on a weekend and were let go for that.
And then there was somebody
like,
like,
what the fuck,
so
man?
that happened. And then they sent an email like, hey guys, if anyone else is working on anything else, why don't you come and tell us you're doing that? You're not going to get penalized for this, but we want to know because you shouldn't be working on other stuff outside your contract. But they literally said, you will not get in trouble. Just please, if you report to us honestly, we will not get you in trouble. Somebody reported honestly that they were doing freelance research for another company. They were fired.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So, very cutthroat, scary times. And that was what was sort of, I think, was the reason that other people started making wireless Buzzfeed is one, they wanted to get
that's
some
why
of
we're telling the story.
the juicy tea, but also that they were mad.
They were pissed.
Keith even talked about how later down the line, he had to turn down a huge opportunity to be in an airline commercial because they wouldn't allow him to do that while still working under the company. And so he had to say no. So clearly how the company was being run at the time was why we ended up getting those iconic Why I Left Buzzfeed videos that launched a lot of individual online careers for former employees. I mean, making one of those videos was the big sign of, hey, I'm over here now, like check out what I can do without a company. And we've seen a ton of former employees thrive over the years. I mean, literally my favorite, Quinta Brunson, just the shining star of former BuzzFeed talent, truly. But something I found interesting was that we also learn in this episode where the BuzzFeed puppy video idea came from, because now it's the press tour stop BuzzFeed is famous for, and apparently this was Keith's idea that he came up with when he wasn't able to be in videos.
There was about 2 to 3 weeks where we did not sign the talent release before like we got them to agree to some changes, whatever. And during that 2 or 3 weeks, it's like, okay, well, I can't do my job.
Right.
So what am I going to do?
What did you do?
And so during that 2 to 3 weeks, Keith and I came up with, I think he pitched to me, Drunk Girls Get Surprised with Puppies.
Yeah.
I made that video.
But I said, I won't make it because I'm not making anything for the company right now. Because I was like, they're mad at me, like, fire me.
Yeah.
I'm making nothing. I'm going to show up at 9 a.m. I'm going to sit at my desk, and I'm going to leave at 5 or 6.
Oh my gosh.
I made
and you did that for a few weeks.
Yeah, for about 2 or 3 weeks. I made this one video because I was like, I'm bored. I want to do something.
Yeah.
And that turned into a fucking smash hit. And now fast forward.
You're like,
That is the Celebrities Play with Puppies interview format that BuzzFeed
What?
makes. Yes.
So that was like, that directly led to the celeb team being like, oh, we would like to do that. Can we? I'm like, go nuts. And so that is now their like one
their
of their
flagship thing.
Yeah.
Even more secrets from behind the scenes were coming to light as they talked about how higher ups didn't like when they worked on the Try Guys videos, even though they were successful, but it was because 3 people working on one video instead of 3 people working on 3 videos didn't sit right with the company. And Zach specifically said 3 people, which is definitely some shade to a certain someone, as we know the Try Guys used to be a 4-person group.
And all of this was like weaving in between the Try Guys stuff. And that was a point of tension, I think, for leadership. And then, but just made, you know.
Wait, why for leadership? It seems like they would like that.
Well, because honestly, every time we worked on a Try Guys thing, they didn't like it.
Oh.
They didn't like it because it was 3 people working on one thing.
Huh.
And I do mean 3 people.
Mm-hmm.
And that's who was working on it.
Yeah. And like we said before, they weren't set up to be a talent company.
Yeah.
So the
bigger
more we made
got,
Try Guys, the
Right.
more we were popular as talent, and the more the world saw us
Right.
as a cast of talent.
It's honestly just crazy to think about where BuzzFeed would still be if these employees had stuck around. I mean, obviously it worked out for the best for the individuals, but the company might have had a longer successful run if they had actually allowed their employees the opportunity to go out and do other projects while still repping the company. Similar to Saturday Night Live, a lot of the cast members are allowed to work on other projects like films, shows, and commercials, but they just have to make sure that they aren't lacking in their main gig, which is Saturday Night Live. And I do think that keeps people around longer and boosts people's interest in tuning into the show itself. Like, yes, of course, the reason why they don't want that all the time is because people might get so big that they don't need to do SNL anymore, but I think being flexible keeps people around longer, at least long enough to where new talent is introduced with some of the old and are starting to gain a name for themselves by the time really famous people want to spread their wings. But Keith and Zach aren't all negative about the company, saying that, you know, they have made some changes over the years and that they recently did visit the BuzzFeed offices to talk with some of the employees there, and they wish them the best.
I mean, I want them to succeed because we are so like interwoven in that story. So like, it's only good if they have more success, I think, ultimately for us. Like,
They also, I think, have learned, seemingly, I'm not there, but from what I'm hearing, they've learned a lot.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of trial by fire of what to do and what not to do.
People have now gone back to watch old videos from employees who left BuzzFeed to hear their old reasonings as to why they left, and have commented on TikToks that have reposted video clips and also clips of this podcast saying BuzzFeed played it so wrong. If they were smart, they would have seen this as an opportunity to develop talent and build a program where they own minor shares of the talent's YouTube channels. This is corporate greed through and through. BuzzFeed got greedy, and if they didn't, I'm sure these people would still be there. BuzzFeed really said, let's stop making them famous instead of let's invest to build talent and get a % of any spin-off companies. BuzzFeed could have been like Smosh or Dropout and had a solid ensemble cast of incredible talent with a huge budget, but they had to ruin it. Thank God they did though. It's a shame because if BuzzFeed leaned into it, they could have been known for being the place that makes new creators and they would thrive. They would be built built for the turnover more. So that's what people have been saying after hearing Zach and Keith air out some of this old BuzzFeed tea. I certainly want to know what you guys think about all of this. I feel like this is like the first time we're talking about the Try Guys again since the whole Ned Fulmer situation where he was caught cheating on his wife and he got kicked out of the Try Guys and it was a whole thing. Him and his wife are still together, by the way, as they have been seen in public a couple of times here and there. But in this situation with the BuzzFeed tea, let me know what you guys think. I love you guys so much and I will talk to you in the next video. Bye, guys.